forgot to turn on my light. My light on. Yeah, baby. Turn on that light. Oh, you know what? You know what? I'm actually going to turn it off because the battery's almost already dead anyway, so who wants that? Hey, everybody, what's going on? What's happening? What's shaking? What's doing? It is Tuesday, September the 26th, 2023, 2:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the Voiceman Studios in Toronto, Canada. And this is episode 227 of McRae Live. I think it's 227, isn't it? Something like that, isn't it? I had to jump on here. I wasn't going to, but then some new information came to me, and I thought, oh, this puts some more meat on the bone. It puts some more meat on the bone, and I thought this would be a good thing to kind of talk about, and you know, because everybody seems to be talking about it, but I wasn't going to jump on and do a show or a video talking about it unless I had a little more meat on the bone, and there's more meat on the bone, so I thought this would be a good time for me to jump on and talk about it. So, of course, we're talking about the Halloween rights. Everybody's losing their minds. Everybody is jumping through windows and pouring gasoline all over themselves and lighting themselves on fire. Halloween! It's going crazy. It's absolute mayhem out in the streets. I mean, I went outside and there were people that were yelling and screaming and waving their pants over their head like, you know, banshees, and they're running down the street and they're, you know, punching old ladies and kicking puppies, and it's wild. I mean, it's absolutely wild out there. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I need to come on and calm everybody down. I don't know. So... It's how we do things here in Canada. But it's wild out there. It's crazy. So, but this is news. I mean, this is, to me, it's not really news. But I understand that, you know, I'm one of the Halloween guys, and I understand that, you know, that's the badge I have sworn to wear, and I understand that anything Halloween related, people want to know my thoughts on it. And I made a social media post today where I gave sort of my thoughts on what I think they should do, and it's nothing that I haven't said already before here on this channel. And I thought that was just going to be it. And then some new information came to me that I thought, that's interesting. Oh, that makes it kind of more fun to talk about and give my perspective on and all that kind of stuff as well. And so that's why I ultimately decided to jump on here, and it's impromptu. I mean, it's not prepared, and you know, so I don't know how many people are going to tune in. I imagine that what will happen is we'll gain more people as the, you know, next hour goes by here or so. But so yeah, the Halloween franchise, of course, as you know, has been dormant since Halloween Ends. And that was the end. And the end of Halloween as we know it. Remember, I was one of those people that was saying back at that time that, no, I do think it is the end. It's the end of Halloween as we know it. The Michael Myers story as we know it, connected to the 1978 original, blah, blah, blah. Of course, they could always change that. But, you know, that's sort of, you know, the way it is. And so, you know, look, I mean, Halloween's a multi-million-dollar franchise, very popular. The last three movies did well, although they did significantly less well with each film. But, you know, in terms of slasher subgenre, they did well. Even Halloween Ends was a box office success, over $100 million, the worldwide box office. And so, yes, I mean, it's of course, they're going to bring Michael back or Halloween back at some point. The question is like, how, what is that going to look like, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And then Bloody Disgusting released an article yesterday, which we will go over and read here together in a moment. And they brought it to the attention that they are, in fact, not them, but that the rights to Halloween, Miramax, is shopping the rights around. No doubt under the guidance and approval of Malek Akkad. And now this is not new. So it's very important for people to remember that, you know, when we get information, right? When we get information, generally speaking, you know, whether it's an actor that's been hired, a contract that's been signed, this kind of information, it's well after the fact. You know, it's not that again, generally, this kind of information doesn't come to us, the day that a studio decides to do something or something like that. Usually these things are done, under the radar, and this kind of information is only reported on or let out or published when some ducks are in their rows, so to speak. So when you find out that, I don't know, Hugh Jackman has just signed on to play such and such and such and such, you know what I mean? Chances are that's been negotiating for months and, all that kind of stuff, right? Like we know that. So this article from Blood Disgusting is not something that Miramax has just suddenly decided to do. I have no doubt they've been doing it for a while, maybe even over a year, testing the waters, right? And that's what this article really is an article about testing the waters and sort of, I'm just bringing up the Box Office Mojo in case I need that. This is, an article. When I read it, I'll be honest with you, to me, it's really a non-news article. I mean, it's a general interest news article, right? Especially for Halloween fans. So that's what I call it, a general news interest for Halloween fans. But there's not a lot of meat on the bone. Now, naturally, of course, if you're excited about it and you're looking for content, you can use this and you can go online and me, I'm one of the most, if not the most verbose Halloween guys in the community. So I'm talking about myself here too, of course, but you can take something like that and stretch it out over, a 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute, in my case, maybe even 90-minute video. But really in reality, there's not a lot here. It's just like, oh yeah, duh. It's sort of like, yeah, of course they would be. It's more confirmation that it's happening, but it's of course they would be doing that, right? But there's not a lot of meat in the article with anything really. So let's read the article first, and then I'll give you my thoughts and we'll dive into kind of more of what I think about everything. So let me just bring up the other screen here. Here we are. So this comes to us from John Squires at Bloody Disgusting. John, great guy over there, says, the future of Halloween. Miramax currently shopping the rights for film and TV exclusive report. So that just means that they are the first ones to get their hands on this information. So this article reads, last Halloween season marked the release of Halloween Ends, the final film in a 3-film trilogy from director David Gordon Green, billed as the final battle. Really, this time, between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. Halloween Ends wrapped up not only Gordon Green's sequel trilogy, but also Universal and Blumhouse's time with the iconic horror franchise. So Universal and Blumhouse are out. They're gone. They're gone. Their time with the franchise has expired. The sequel trilogy was produced by Blumhouse Productions and released into theaters by Universal Pictures as part of a pact with Miramax, and the ball is now back in Miramax's court. Okay, so let me just jump over to the other screen here for a second. I will continue reading in a moment. So keep in mind, right, there's a difference between a production company and a studio. And so Blumhouse, again, the lines can be blurred a little bit too, depending on how big you are. Sometimes you can distribute your own film and, on a small release, whatever, and you kind of are the studio kind of, for all intents and purposes. Obviously, there's nuances in there, but Blumhouse is a production company. So they're not a studio like Universal. So Blumhouse makes the movie. Jason Blum hires the director. He brings people on board. He organizes it. They make the movie, and then Universal distributes the movie, right? Because they have all the money and the access to the resources for the international and the domestic and all that kind of stuff. So Blumhouse was brought on to make the movie because they are in the horror community at the studio level. They are, who better to get? You know what I'm saying? It's Blumhouse. They are the horror gods. You know what I'm saying? So although some people may argue against that, but you know what I mean, right? So it's that, they are the production company. They make the movie. And Universal had signed on to be like, okay, well, we will work with Blumhouse and they will make the movie and we will agree to distribute the movie. And that's what they did. But now those rights have expired. So they're like, well, they're out now. They don't, it just, it goes back to Miramax and Trancas, right? So I just want to make that distinction because some people think that it's one and the same and it's not. They're two very distinct things. Okay, so now over to here. Yes. So what's next for the Halloween franchise? Bloody Disgusting can exclusively report that Miramax is actively shopping the rights to the Halloween franchise around Hollywood. From what we understand, there is a massive bidding war going on right now. How massive? We don't know. We don't know. With several different parties interested and vying for the chance to bring Michael Myers back to life. Bloody Disgusting sources have also indicated that Miramax is open to both film and television projects, and they're currently taking offers from studios and streamers alike. Everything is on the table at this time, and it's ultimately up to Miramax to field pitches and decide what is most appealing to them in the wake of Gordon Green's sequel trilogy. Last year's Halloween Ends was the 13th installment, the 12th Michael Myers movie, but the 13th installment in the Halloween franchise, which to date has never made its way onto the small screen. Could Michael Myers return with a television series, or is another feature film reboot next up on the menu? Only time will tell. Stay tuned for more on all things Halloween as we learn it. In the meantime, comment down below and let us know what you think about Halloween, blah, 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 blah. And that's the Bloody Disgusting article. So that's it. That is the news. So that right there, ladies and gentlemen, what I just read to you there is the news. That is the news. And so there's not a lot there, is there? It's sort of kind of self-explanatory. I guarantee you Miramax hasn't just started doing this. They've been doing it a while. But Bloody Disgusting, either they were sitting on this for a while and maybe was waiting until the writer's strike was over, possibly because it hasn't been ratified yet, but it is, again, for all intents and purposes, especially when you read what the WGA has said, and they've said that that they are absolutely, I'm paraphrasing, but there's in their statement, they said that they are basically over the moon with this, with this thing. So with this agreement. So it's going to be ratified. The strike is going to be over. I have no doubt that even now writers are starting to go back to work, get things ready and all that kind of stuff. So they may have been sitting on this for a little bit and now have just decided to release it. I don't know. That happens too, depending on your resource and access to certain connections. Sometimes people will reach out to you and say, hey, I got something here. This is what we're doing. I'm not going to tell anybody about this, but I want you guys to break the story, but you can't break it until we fucking solve this fucking, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes that happens too. I'm just saying, right? Sometimes it happens too. So it's possible that John Squires and Bloody Disgusting have been sitting on this for, a few months and just haven't been able to publish it yet. And then just decided to do it yesterday. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that those things do happen, but there's not a lot of meat here. This is pretty self-explanatory. In terms of, maybe that's not the right way to say it. It's pretty, like I said, like, duh, right? Of course they are. And we know they are. However, there was a tweet that I saw yesterday. I don't know, are they still called tweets? That I sort of I saw in passing, and then I didn't have a chance to really sort of comment on it or whatever, because I had a production meeting with Bruce last night. And so that obviously took up my time, and, I moved away from that. But it was, I forget who tweeted it, but it was something to do with somebody, again, this is Twitter, right? Somebody's got sources, and their sources say that according to them, this is good intel, that that Paramount is the front runner. They are the front runner, and they are really going for it. And what they want to do is they want to do maybe like a 6-episode series and put it onto Paramount Plus. Well, you could say that, Elvis Presley is still alive, and it catches on like anything catches on like wildfire on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Even if there's no truth to it. And so I saw that. I didn't deep dive into who the post came from or what. It might have just been a couple of reposts or retweets that I saw, or reposts, I guess they're now called. But I saw that and I thought, oh, okay, well, I guess it's possible. Well, over on the Facebook page, The Road to Halloween 45, which is run by the Slaughtered Lamb movie podcast guys, Darren and Frank and Darren. Great guys, by the way. If you haven't subscribed to their channel, make sure you do it. The Slaughtered Lamb movie podcast, TSL movie podcast. They're fantastic. and they have the Slaughtered Lamb Movie Podcast Facebook page, but they also created a Facebook page called, I think it's called The Road to Halloween, if I'm not mistaken. And, or no, the Road to Halloween 45, I think it's called. The Road to Halloween 45. If you Facebook it, you'll find it. And I think they got like 700 or 800 members in there. And it's cool. It's cool. They were like, generating hype for the convention, which is happening this weekend in Pasadena and all that kind of stuff. And over there, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know this, but I am a member of the group, and that Ryan Freeman, who is the SVP, that's Senior Vice President of Trancas International. Ryan Freeman is the Senior Vice President of Trancas International. And he has come out and said that, no, that's bullshit. So Paramount being the front runner and a Paramount Plus show that has to do with Season of the Witch and a 6-episode thing, it's nonsense. He says, no, I believe his exact words were, who comes up with this shit? It's like, no, not at all. So there you go. And Ryan Freeman is the Senior Vice President of Trancas International. Now, you're always going to have people out there, sound like you're always going to have people out there, man. You're always going to have people out there that, it doesn't matter what evidence you put in front of them or what senior, what individual in a very senior position in a position of authority to know certain bits of information. You're always going to have people that go, oh, he's just saying that. He can't say that. He's just saying that. He's just saying that. Okay. All right. Okay. Fair enough. Right. I mean, you can't convince everybody, but as far as I'm concerned, the Senior Vice President of Trancas International coming out and saying, yeah, no, that's not happening. That's good enough for me. Is he lying? Well, maybe. I don't know. I mean, obviously I don't know, but the probability is high that he's not. And part of the reason for that is because there probably hasn't been a lot of movement on this lately. Because in case you haven't noticed, there was a WGA strike. So nobody since the beginning of May, so June, July, August, September, for 4.5 months, nearly 5 months, I mean, that's almost half a year, right? There's been no movement on anything. Right? There's been no writing. There's been no engagement in talks, discussions, negotiations. And then, of course, when the actors went on strike in July, and I know a little something about that because we're dealing with that right now with, It's Me, Billy, Chapter 2, there's nothing. We can't do anything. So that's why we've, applied for an interim agreement. But that's neither here nor there. That's a whole other topic. But so it's one of these things where there probably wasn't a lot of movement at all. So even if there was some movement, let's say in February, March, and April, that movement would have been squashed by the time it came to May. And so even if you had WGA writers, which they would have to, have been, writing stuff for a new Halloween thing, which is nowhere near where they are with this, by the way, they would have had to have stopped. Okay. But I feel pretty confident in saying that nobody's writing fuck all yet. They're taking pitches, right? They're taking pitches is what Miramax is basically saying. Hey, we're taking pitches. We're taking pitches. And you've got to be really prepared with those pitches, Think about Shark Tank. Think about Dragon's Den, right? You go on there, and if you don't know your ass from your elbow or your pitch is very weak, are you going to get, offers? No. This isn't just a situation where, you go into a room and you say, hey, so here's my idea. What about, like some Twitter post? That's not how it works. So I think we have to kind of just back it up here for a second and realize that, there's really not a lot of information here. And really what basically the article is saying is that, hey, Miramax is taking pitches. And I know that John Squires has said, according to his source, there's a massive bidding war. Okay, there's a massive bidding war. But what does that mean? Well, that can mean a number of things. As fans, we tend to take things to the extreme, right? And we tend to, think that, phones are ringing off the hook and, cigarettes are being smoked and people are on the phone and things are happening and emails are being sent. And it's a massive bidding war. But everybody's in there. It's like, those 80s films you see are like, Trading Places, right? Where you're on the grounds of the World Trade Center, and everybody's going, hey, I don't know. It's just going to. Well, maybe. I'm not really sure. What do you think? I got Netflix on the phone. 500 million. 500 million. Oh, fuck. Yo, I got Paramount on the phone. 600 million. Oh, fuck. Oh, my God. Netflix. What do you think? These got 600 million. I mean, that's like, you know, we tend to think that, you know, when you hear or read language like massive bidding war, it's massive, right? Take the word massive and then take the word war, right? Massive bidding war, right? And I think for some people, it paints a picture like it's really intense. Like it's crazy. It's crazy what's going on right now. And it's like, no. It's a very flowery way of saying that there's a lot of interest. That's basically what it says. It's in my opinion, from what I understand and the people that I've spoken to about this, you know, it's a flowery way of showing that, yeah, there's interest. You know, it's not like, you know, there's crickets, right? You know, maybe Netflix has shown some interest. Maybe Amazon has shown some interest. Maybe Paramount has shown interest. Maybe Hulu's shown some interest. You know what I mean? Like there's some interest from people, right? You know what I mean? But in terms of, you know, phones ringing off the hook and people throwing out numbers and all this kind of stuff, I don't think we're there yet. I really don't. Because there couldn't have been any movement on anything over the last few months. Are people having conversations? Are phone calls being had? Shooting from the hip? Talking? Sure. But there can't be any movement because there was a WGA strike for, you know, nearly 5 months. There's a writer's strike right now. So you couldn't even go to a pitch meeting and say, hey, I've got so-and-so in the movie. Or in your pitch, right? Like what we did with Olivia, right? You know what I mean? Signed like, you know, an LOI, letter of intent. We get this person there. We do all this. You can't even do that. With SAG actors, you cannot legally enter into any negotiations with any actors when a strike is on. So you couldn't even use them in your pitch, right? You know, and so I don't think they're hearing ideas, right? They're hearing ideas, pitches, ideas, directions. Hey, what about this? What about this? What about that? What about this? And Miramax is currently shopping the rights around to different people to say, hey, would you be interested in the Halloween rights? What about this? You know, what about this? You know, what do you think? And maybe Amazon's like, yeah, maybe. It's interesting. Let's see if we got some people that might know a thing or two. And they've had some phone calls, you know, and things like that. That's where I think this is, at least right now. Now, of course, I could be wrong. Maybe everybody's picking up the phone and things are going crazy and all that. Sure, maybe it is. But I don't feel it's going in that direction. And there's also so many different ways that you can structure a deal as well. There's a lot of different ways you can structure a deal. Miramax could just keep it. Miramax could just keep it and find another production company, you know, and partner with them and, you know, find a distributor. Like it might not be as heavily involved as the first time around, you know? And so I just think it's important that we understand that to keep things in perspective. And the only reason why I see that is because I see some posts from people and stuff saying things that aren't quite, in my estimation, and I'm not saying I'm the world's foremost expert, but I'm just saying that in my estimation, I don't think is quite accurate. I don't think, despite the fact that Universal, I believe it was, purchased the rights to The Exorcist for $400 million. I think that was ridiculous. I think they overpaid for The Exorcist, and I think it was asinine to do that. I mean, back when it happened, I remember I was kind of optimistic. I'm like, well, I guess. I mean, you know, I guess if they do this and do that, and you know what I mean. But we also have to remember too, okay, that you know, I don't believe for 1 second that that anybody is going to. Now, again, I could be wrong, right? Of course I could be wrong. I'm just letting, based on what I know, who I've talked to, what I know, sort of, you know, gathering information, you know, I've come to the consensus that yeah, no, I don't think that the Halloween rights are going to sell for anywhere near that. I don't think there's a studio out there that would spend $400 million, not, post COVID, now for a franchise that didn't even make, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe there's a studio or a streaming service out there that would buy the Halloween rights for $400 million. I could be wrong, but I will go out on the record to say I don't think that's going to happen. The total amount, and I brought it up here, the total amount that the previous 3 Halloween movies made at the box office, and I added them up. I mean, I might be off by a number or two if I, punch something in incorrectly, but I just took the worldwide totals of 18 kills and ends, right? And it comes to a total, this is the total amount of all 3 movies, 493,493,000, that's weird, 688. So $493,493,688, nearly $500 million, right? And you sit there and you think, wow, that's a lot. That's so much. Well, of course they could spend that much in buying. That's how much Halloween's worth. Some fans think that if it made that much money, that means that's how much it's worth. First of all, we have to remember that the studios don't see that money. Okay. When a movie makes, say, $500 million at the box office, that $500 million doesn't go to the studio. Okay. About 40 to 50% of that will go to the studio. And then the other 60% will go to the exhibit, to the theaters. Right. And again, I'm giving the Cole's Notes version here. And there's also overhead on top of that, right? There's taxes on top of that. So 500 million, maybe they get 50% of that. So now they're left with 250 million. And then they got to pay taxes on that, right? So then there goes another $50 million, or whatever in taxes. And then they got to pay people at the studio. There's overhead. There's people who work for them and all that kind of stuff. They got to pay their interest back to the money they borrowed to make the movie, right? Depending on, how much that is. So, and then there's marketing on top of that. Remember the production budget of a movie. So if a movie costs $40 million to make, that's the production budget. That doesn't include marketing. So they could have also spent $100 million between the 3 movies in marketing. Right? You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, okay, and I don't have an exact number, obviously, we have to keep in mind that, when a movie makes $500 million at the box office, that's the gross total, right? That doesn't mean that money, it's like if if your salary, let's say, is $100,000 a year, well, you're not getting $100,000. You know what I'm saying? There's lots of things on top of that. In the normal everyday working person world, there's taxes, and then of course you pay into your health and your pension, and and there's things that get deducted from your paycheck, right? Well, it's the same thing here. And again, it's not an exact comparison, but in the sense of that the Halloween franchise is not worth $500 million. You know what I mean? It's not like Blumhouse and Universal made $500 million. The movie made $500 million. But there's so many things. Like I said, the theaters, overhead, taxes, all that kind of stuff. And so it's important that we keep those things in mind. I don't think any studio is going to pay $400 million for the Halloween franchise. I really don't. Because remember, they didn't make $400 million from the Halloween. The movie made $493 million, but the studios didn't make $493 million, right? The studios might have made, between all 3 films, after overhead, I mean, there's probably over 100 million, probably, but it might have been less than 200 million, right? So, when you factor in all the costs, where the studios will make the extra and make it up after is when it goes to streaming, right? And when it goes, back in the day when it used to go to physical media and all that kind of stuff, right? That's when they home video release, right? And extra box sets, and special editions and anniversary editions, and the rights to Netflix to be able to, the licensing rights, right? Hey, Netflix, you can spend this much to air David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy for an entire month in October. And they're going to spend, I don't know, Netflix is going to spend, I'm not saying it's this. I'm just saying, $50 million to do this. Hey, there it is. Right. So anyways, these are my thoughts on it. And I just feel that, we have to, I really think this is, I understand why people are excited, especially when it comes to Halloween news. There's lots of Halloween news that comes out, and any little bit of news is exciting. But to me, when I read the article, I was like, and I wasn't going to do anything on it. And then the Ryan Freeman stuff came to me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's because I saw that post being shared all over the place like it's, the gospel. And I was like, oh, that's my hook. Okay, now I feel good going online talking about it because I think that's new information a lot of people don't know. And I've seen people share that. And I think it's important to understand that, the senior vice president of Trancas International, I mean, he's like probably the one guy below Malik. So he's, beyond Malik, he's the guy, and I think, he's come out and said, listen, that's not true. I don't know where they get this. I don't know, but it ain't happening. That doesn't mean that Paramount isn't in the discussion. That doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean that Season of the Witch isn't on the table. That doesn't mean that. He's just saying that this specific reporting, this specific news story about how Paramount Plus is leading the charge and is ready to, green light a 6-episode Season of the Witch series, that story is not true. That's not true. And your senior vice president of Trancas International has said so. And like I said, you're always going to get somebody going, he's probably just covering it. It's like, oh, of course. Of course, So, but hey, it's good enough for me. It's good enough for me. So that I think that's important too. So if you see anybody spreading that or posting about that, make sure you say, hey, listen, Ryan Freeman said that, it's not true. And if they want to know where you found that information, head over to the Road to Halloween 45 Facebook page from the Slaughtered Lamb guys, Frank and Darren, and it's there, and you can just screen grab it and share it. I think it's important, and I don't think, again, it's not to, I don't know who initially came up with that, and I don't know who their sources are. And maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Maybe Paramount is kind of at the forefront. Maybe that is true, but all the other stuff isn't, and he got something wrong. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. All I know is this, and I've said this multiple times on this channel. All I know, how I operate here on my channel, and it doesn't mean I'm perfect, but how I operate on my channel is, and what I've learned in my life, as I've said many times, I grew up in a media family. For those of you who don't know, my dad was one of Canada's top writers for many years. He's since passed, but so I grew up in a media family. And I met celebrities and sports athletes. And as I've often said, I have a bunch of photos of my dad on my wall back here with the Beatles and Robert Kennedy and, my dad had an amazing life. And so I grew up in a media family, and I learned a lot from my dad, about, of course, it was in relation to writing and newspapers, of course, back in the day. But the principles of reporting news or talking about news or whatever are still the same when you get on a YouTube channel and you have a trusted audience, or you're on social media and you have a trusted audience and you want to make sure that they trust you. I remember my dad saying, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but I remember him saying, usually when a source gives you information, it's not share worthy. Do you know what I mean? Because usually it needs to be vetted further. There's nuances that you still don't feel comfortable with, and I think there's far too many people out there in the social media landscape. I'm not calling out anybody specific, and I'm not talking about anybody specific. I'm just speaking in a general sense of what we all see online, right? Is that I think this rush to be first, this rush to be right, it's an obsession, and they want the clicks, they want the hearts, they want the likes, they want the engagement, they want to get, the dopamine hits and make them feel like I'm a trusted thing. And I would rather, hardly ever do that and be right all the time than always do that and be right 3/4 or, half the time. And so it's important that we take things with a grain of salt, especially when it's coming from, I don't know, channels, accounts that there's so much out there. There's so much out there. Like, I'll give you an example of how I operate. Okay. For those of you that maybe are new here and don't know. So when it comes to Halloween, I have a few reputable connections from people that would be in positions to know certain information. So it's not Bob's friend's brother's mother. I mean, it's people that would be in a certain position to know information. And when it came to the release dates of the Halloween trailers, I knew the release dates of the Halloween trailers quite early. But I didn't go online immediately and say, I think this is here, look at, because I don't care about the recognition really at the end of the day. It's for me, it's more about making sure that I'm right, not because look at me, I'm right, because for my audience, I already know when it is, but I need to be sure. And sometimes my sources will say, hey, listen, here's when it is, but don't, you know what, just wait a little bit because this could happen and this could happen and that it's probably definitely going to be this, but just hold off and wait, you know, if that's going to happen and that kind of stuff. And so I didn't release it, you know, and then when I was given the go ahead for the Halloween Ends trailer, I played coy. I was cheeky, right? And I made a post where I said, I made a post that had Naomi Watts from The Ring on it. And, you know, she's on the phone, right? And I said, what do The Ring and the Halloween Ends trailer have in common? And of course, the answer is 7 days. If you've seen The Ring, right? 7 days. And some people got it. Some people were a little confused, but, you know, I like to do that. It's you know, it's kind of fun. And that was, and so I felt comfortable that soon out, like that soon, I felt I was finally given the green light to, you know, to go ahead. And then 3 hours after my tweet, Jamie Lee Curtis came out and said, it's coming in 7 days, whatever. So it's good that I was, you know, before her because, you know, it doesn't look like I was, you know, copying her. Right. But the point I'm making is that it's very important that, you know, in my experience, you can get a lot of information and a lot of stuff that's sent to you, but 9 times out of 10, it's not share worthy. It's just info and hearsay and maybes and what about this? But of course, we do live in a world now, and we've been in this world for quite some time, even basically since the 90s, really, when cable news came in and was a really, really big thing. We are no longer in the business, and I say this, you know, even with the mainstream media, we're no longer in the business of covering the news. We're in the business of creating the news to cover. And as somebody that, as I said, grew up in a media family, that's very true. And listen, I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm just saying when it comes to YouTube and things like that, you know, because it's so dependent on algorithms and clicks and likes and engagement, you know, same with, you know, Twitter and Instagram and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I get it. I understand the need and the desire to, you know, but my only advice, and again, I'm not saying I'm the world's biggest expert. I'm just saying that in my experience, my advice would be to those who are in the scoop game, be careful, you know, because you may have had, you may have thought you had something really good. But now the senior vice president of Trancas International has come out and said, that's not true. And it's still continuing to spread, right? And today, I mean, once it spreads, it's difficult to stop it. And so I just think, you know, make sure you're right. But that's not the business we're in, right? In terms of, when I say the business, I'm not in any of that business, but I'm just mean that, being on YouTube and sharing, you know, all that kind of stuff, we're in that sphere of we can take something and then we create news out of it. And that's basically what's happened here. Is we've taken the article written by John Squires, and it's not that there's no news around it at all. No, there's news around it. It's interesting, but I classify it as a general interest thing because there's really not a lot of meat there, right? And so it's important that, you know, we don't take that. And a lot of people, and again, I'm not talking about anybody specific. Here I am on my fucking YouTube channel right now talking about it. You know what I mean? I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not calling anybody out in my own community or anything like that. That's not what this is about. I'm speaking in a general sense, right? In a general sense. I just think it's important, for myself included. I remind myself of this as well, which is why I wasn't going to go live today until I got that hook with Ryan Freeman. I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's news. That's news, because that's somebody in a senior position that says that rumor that's catching on like wildfire, it ain't true. That's news. That's interesting to me. And I don't have to create news around that to cover that, right? It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I decided to go live and then just combine it all into one. But I think it's important, I say this, and I know it falls on deaf ears just because of the landscape of social media and all that kind of stuff, I get it. That's what these scoopers do. They find little bits of information and they exploit it to create news because they need to keep posting. And when you do that, you inevitably will run into problems. And of course you will inevitably be right? The more you do, the more you guess, the more you throw, of course you're going to be right? Once or twice, or maybe even three, of course. And then what ends up happening is they use that time they were right as the litmus test of their credibility, right? And it's like, well, it's like a psychic, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like what, a psychic can have 546 misses, but they happen to nail down the date of your father's passing, and all of a sudden they're a genius and they must know everything, and we tend to forget the misses and only think about the hits. And so, and again, and I keep repeating myself because this is the internet and I don't want my words taken out of context. I don't want people to put words in my mouth or insinuate or assume I am talking about somebody. I'm not talking about anybody. I'm speaking in a general sense, the landscape of social media and being online, right? Which is, here I am. I think it's very important that we be careful with that because look what happened, right? You get out there, this is what it is, and all of a sudden it's not. And so that's why, I do receive a lot of information, but I rarely ever say anything, either because I'm not comfortable, either because the source is not comfortable, or it's just too early. It's too early. It likely will be this, but it's too early. But then again, I'm also not in that game, right? My Twitter account is not all about scooping, and neither is my social media, and neither is this channel. So I do understand, I can intellectualize and understand that if you are somebody in that game, that's just all you do. Like maybe your, I don't know, Twitter handle is Bob the Scooper or something, or, whatever it is, right? Well, yeah. And now you got to keep posting about everything, right? So, because if you're not posting, you're irrelevant. And if you're irrelevant, you're out of sight, out of mind, all that kind of stuff. And you want to be that guy. You want to be the guy or the gal or anybody in between. You want to be that person that is the go-to. And I think your followers and viewers and would rather hear from you once a year and be right than hear from you 40 times a month and be right once a year. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's just something I wanted to say because I think it's important. But I think this is largely a non-story, really, at the end of the day, in terms of what can we get from this? Not a lot. And I don't think there's really anything that is happening in terms of Miramax currently shopping the rights for film and TV. Yeah. I think the most interesting thing here is film and TV. That I think is interesting. That is exciting to me. That I find interesting because I do think that there will be something, although I don't know for sure, I do think that it does make sense to go the route of Season of the Witch. And like I said on my post, actually, let me bring up my social media post and just read because then that way I can keep it compartmentalized and I don't have to, blah, 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 blah. Let me bring up my social media post here and read this to you guys. So this is what I posted earlier today about, what I think they should do or whatever. Even though I've said this before, it'll keep me on track. It's not that long, and then we can go on to the Q&A. My thoughts on the recent Halloween news. Despite Michael Myers being a proven box office draw, and let me stop there and say, listen, there's a high probability that the next Halloween thing they do will have something to do with Michael Myers because he's the face of the franchise, of course, right? Of course. But despite that, I'm talking personally now, I have very little interest in seeing him back, at least right now. We have 12 Michael Myers movies. There's good, there's bad, and there's ugly, but there are 12. The Myers story has been played out. Let it go and allow the fan base to miss his presence. I've said it for years. Go anthology. You could tell weird, creepy, and downright scary stories within the same universe if you wanted. After all, the story of Charlie Bowles has a lot of untapped potential. Was Charlie a killer? Plot twist, maybe it was his wife. Maybe the kids were the killers. So many fucked up directions. Or Season of the Witch. This is the likely avenue they will take. You already have a built-in fan base, and if done right, it might make a great streaming series. I am not emotionally attached to Season of the Witch, so I couldn't care less if it was a sequel or a remake, but it's certainly ripe for the picking. Lots of time to flesh out the story and build insidious paranoia and impending doom, and with a bigger budget. I am also not interested, I've talked about this before too, I am also not interested in some sort of Loomis series, although I'd certainly watch, wherein we explore his earlier years taking care of kids before he knew Myers. There's nothing to tell in my estimation. If you give too much adventure to Loomis before he ever met Myers, you run the risk of watering down the Myers story. It's no longer special if Myers is no longer a unique experience for Loomis. Loomis, a man of science, was always out of his depth with Myers, somewhat supernatural, which challenged Loomis's training. I always believed that Loomis's life was pretty routine and pedestrian before Myers came along. You don't want to introduce a series of situations where Loomis has experienced equally, or maybe even more fucked up, situations and interesting kids than the one he met in 1963. So you don't want, a story, a backstory where Loomis is meeting all sorts of crazy kids, because then it could water down the Myers side of things, right? I also don't want a young Myers series either. He must, for the integrity of the mystique and enigma of his character, remain as mysterious as possible. Doing anything with a young Michael will only and likely unnecessarily demystify him. I am down for a Charlie Bowles tale though, although it's unlikely that's the direction they'll take, and make it as dark and creepy as possible. So that was my social media post today. You've heard me talk about that before on the channel. I still feel that way about it. But I do think it is unlikely they will go the Charlie Bowles route. I think it makes sense that they are going to they're going to do a sideways step and do something with Season of the Witch. That doesn't mean that the Paramount rumor was true, right? Remember, Ryan Freeman's talking about that specific news thing. 6 episodes, Season of the Witch, Paramount Plus. That's what Ryan Freeman is talking about, right? He's not saying that we're not going to do anything with Season of the Witch. He's talking about that news story specifically. I think Season of the Witch is likely because it already has a built-in fan base, as I said, and I think there's a lot of untapped potential there that you could do. I remember, this is a couple years ago now, maybe even before Halloween Kills came out. It might have been during the pandemic. If you follow me for any length of time, you know this already. But I was... Jason Blum was doing a live TikTok or something like that. And I forget who else was in the room with him, but it was just on him. It was a vertical video. Jason, you're a movie guy. You should know to turn that sucker landscape. Anyways, although can you on Instagram? Maybe you can't on Instagram. Maybe you can't on Instagram. Fair enough. But anyway, he was live and he was talking about, Halloween, the movies, all that kind of stuff. And I'm paraphrasing, but somebody asked him in the chat something about what's the next Halloween going to be? What do you guys, something like that. And I remember Jason Blum, again, I'm paraphrasing, him saying something to the effect of something about Season of the Witch. Like he had alluded to something with Season of the Witch, and then he quickly there was somebody in the room with him, and he kind of quickly backtracked and was like, oh, but that's for another day. Something like that. It was something in that ballpark with Season of the Witch. Now remember, Blumhouse no longer is involved with Halloween, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't privy to information that Malick and Trankis wanted to do after. And maybe at that time, there was discussion between extending the contract and Blumhouse doing a season of The Witch. That's entirely possible as well. Because remember, this is a few years ago now, right? So things change. In the world of movies, fucking a week is like, 10 years. So I can tell you by going through my little, my own little version of that right now. And so, it's entirely possible that at that time, the reason why he was speaking candidly about it is because maybe he was under the impression that there maybe, once Halloween Ends is over, maybe we renegotiate and maybe, right? I do think that Season of the Witch is something that's on the table. Obviously, we know from Ryan Freeman that specific story about Paramount and the 6 episodes, all that is bogus. But I do think the Season of the Witch is a likely thing because it's a sidestep. It's not a complete reinvention. It is a risk. And I do think it makes sense for a series. I think it does make sense. Whether it ends up being that or not, I don't know. But Miramax is shopping it around. Hey, who's interested? Who's interested? And, the bidding war, the flowery language that John Squires used, we often hear that too, right? We often hear that. It's also a general sort, not a general, but it's a commonly used phrase, is it, I guess? Statement. It's commonly used. We have heard that before. Bidding war. Right? We've heard that term before with other properties and other franchises. So to what degree is it a war, or is it just, as I said earlier, the flowery language to let you know that there's people interested, right? So we're not privy to that information. We don't know. So anyway, before we move over to the Q&A here, let me just recap these points. It's an interesting article. Hey, it's Halloween news. We love Halloween news. I don't think there's a lot of meat on the bone there at all. And I think really you can talk about this article in, just a couple of minutes, right? I mean, I had a lot, to say here, obviously, but there's not a lot of meat on the bone there. It's a duh, obviously, but now it's been confirmed and Miramax is shopping it around. So there's that. Okay, cool. All right. Do I think that studios like A24 and smaller studios, because somebody asked me, do I think A24 could take a shot? And I do, because I do not think that they're going to sell. Now, I could be wrong, but I do not think that the Halloween franchise is going to sell for $500 million. No, nowhere close. And I've laid out reasons why here today. I'm not saying it's not worth a lot of money, but it's not, like, unless they hold out and somebody comes along and overpays for it. Okay. I mean, sure, that could happen, but I don't think in the near future, we're going to see a bloody disgusting article where we see, Warner Brothers has spent, $650 million on the rights to Halloween. Are you crazy? That's massive. I mean, those movies would have to be making $1 billion at the box office in order to get that money back. So that's point number, what am I, 3 now, I guess, right? Remember, when a movie makes $500 million, that $500 million doesn't go to the studio. You know what I mean? About 40 to 50% does, give or take. There's different, contracts and, all that kind of stuff, but that's generally what it is. And then the theaters take the rest. And then with the 250 million, maybe they got to pay taxes on that. They got to pay the interest back. They have to pay their overhead. They have to pay their staff. They have to pay, you know what I'm saying? So even though Halloween grossed nearly $500 million, Universal maybe made $100 million from it. Right? So, and it could be a little more than that too. Could be a little less than that. And then there's marketing. They've also spent all that marketing too, right? So that's the third point. Keep that in mind. So when a movie makes $500 million, that doesn't mean the franchise is worth $500 million. So we have to keep that in mind. And so, yeah, so I don't think you're going to see it sell for that much. And so I do think there's smaller players like an A24, like I don't know, like a Spy. Well, no, Spyglass is with, they're a subsidiary. They're with the, but independent kind of guys, right? Because A24 is not even part of the AMPTP, yet. I mean, I'm sure they'll probably eventually, but they're not even part of the AMPTP yet. They are a truly independent production company / media studio kind of thing. You know, would they do it? They might. They might. It depends on it depends on the structure of the deal. See, that's another thing I need to say. It depends on the structure of the deal. You know, there's so many ways you can structure a deal, right? It's not just about, hey, here's what it costs for the rights. You give us the money for the rights, and then you go make the movie. That's not the only way to structure a deal. There's many ways you can structure a deal that could be cheaper and more attractive to a studio like A24. Maybe A24, you know, says, hey, listen, you know, we can't afford to pay $500 million for a goddamn freaking. And no, they probably can't. But they could say, well, what about this? Here's our pitch. Here's the structure of our deal. And Malik and, you know, Miramax, they look at that and they go, that's a fucking actually really good fucking deal. Holy shit. And this is what you're offering. And this is what, interesting. Okay. So we have to come on board and do that, but you're going to do this. You're going to give us that. We're going to do this. And then there's the back. And then, okay, cool. Like there's many ways. It's not all about just, hey, what are the rights? 250 million. Give me 250 million. That's the only way you can make this movie. It doesn't work like that. There's many different ways you can structure a deal and different variables that come into play. So we have to keep that in mind as well. So I do think so it wouldn't surprise me, although I don't know if A24 is interested because they got Crystal Lake right now. It wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't, you know, if all of a sudden we find out that it did go to them or they are interested, and then you look at the structure of the deal, you know, whatever the case is. So we got to keep those things in mind too. So there's lots of variables at play, and those are my thoughts. I know I've talked for, you know, an hour here, but I wanted to get all that out, and hopefully, and again, I'm not saying I'm the world's foremost expert. I'm not, but you know, having you know, based on my experience working in the industry, based on who I know working in the industry, who have taught me a lot of things and shared knowledge with me. And, you know, these are my thoughts. And I could be wrong. I mean, maybe tomorrow we'll find out that Warner Brothers has spent, you know, $500 million on the rights to Halloween. I would be like, are you crazy? But maybe, you know, you never know. But I think that I like to come at these shows and my channel with informed opinions, right? That's what it's about, is being informed. It doesn't mean you're always going to be right, but you're coming from a place that, well, based on this, this, and this, I think the probability is high that it'll be this. But of course, things can always change, right? But keep in mind that The Exorcist was at one time Warner Brothers' most successful film of all time. It was far more successful than Halloween ever was. And so, you know, Universal back before the pandemic, or, you know, whenever it is, you know, whatever it was, they decided to take a risk and spend $400 million on the, I think it's far too much. I think they overpaid for it. And whether or not it makes that money back, who knows? But studios are in the business of making money and losing money. That's what they do. And so they looked at what the Halloween franchise was doing, and Blumhouse convinced them to, hey, let's see if we can do this. You know, and who knows what the structure of the deal was. But I do think they overpaid for that, and I will be surprised, you know, but, you know, if Halloween follows suit. I don't know. But you can set your price at anything. If somebody's dumb enough to buy it, you can set your price over the Halloween. If Malik and Trancas want to be like, okay, our price is, you know, $900 million. Okay, well, most everybody in the business would be like, okay, what kind of crack are you smoking here? You know, but if there's somebody dumb enough out there to go, okay, you know what I mean? But they know that. I mean, Malik, Ryan Freeman, they're professionals. They've been in this business a long time. Miramax, obviously there's that stain with the Weinsteins, but they've separated themselves now from them. Obviously, the Weinsteins are no longer involved. Is Bob Weinstein still involved? Is he? I'm not sure. Harvey, we know, isn't, but I don't think they are. And but we'll see, you know, we'll see what happens. But those are my thoughts. And you know, it's exciting, you know, anytime there's Halloween news, it is exciting to read about it. I just don't think there's a lot of meat on the bone here. And we need to be careful with what we share and how we speculate, basically. And again, I don't mean that I hope to goodness I haven't come across as pretentious or condescending or anything like that. I don't mean that at all. I'm not talking about anybody specific. I haven't watched any videos. I'm not talking about anybody. I'm just talking about, from my perspective, what I see, when you scroll Twitter, do you know what I mean? Or, you scroll Facebook, and you see all these rumors flying around and you're like, oh my God, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Anyways, I don't have a lot of time left, but let's jump over to the chat room and see what all of you are saying. Let me see here. Let me go over and see. I know I had a few super chats that did come in. Let me get those. Oh, it's just a super sticker from Arthur Vega. Thank you, Arthur. And Josh McKenna sends in $9.99 and says, have you watched the show Kyle XY from several years ago? I have not. I watched the show back when it was on the air, and I remember it ended on this cliffhanger and that it was canceled with questions unanswered. I have not seen it. I've never even heard of the show. But thank you for the question, Josh. And yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than a show that you're really into ending on a cliffhanger and then it gets canceled, right? I mean, that happened with me in a couple of shows. So, it is what it is. It is what it is. Let me see here. Blair Hathaway says, Dave, do you ever watch your own videos? Not usually, no. I think what I usually do is, after I do a live stream like this one, once the stream's processed and it's up, I will watch a bit of it back to make sure that there were no issues, because I've had issues with some streams in the past. But no, I don't. I haven't watched it. I don't go back and watch an episode of Two Dudes or anything like that or whatever. No, I don't. Sometimes I will go back and be like, oh, did I do a video on that? And I'll YouTube Dave McRae, such and I'm like, to see if I've already talked about that or done a video on that. Just so I'm not over repeating myself, although I know I do repeat myself. But no, I don't on a, Sunday afternoon, I'm going to tune into Dave McRae today. No, I don't do that. Tails fan, is that Tails fan? Tails fan 109 says, the main reason this is probably considered news is due to how early the news came and that the internet is prone to making emotions as extreme as possible. I was pretty excited, however. How early the news came? You mean like how soon after the release of Halloween Ends? Is that what you're talking about? I don't think it's that early. I think this has been being shopped around for a while. Now, again, there's only so much they can do. They could have done, obviously. It's like when it was announced that, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. And so when it was announced, I forget his name, but the director of Happy Death Day, he was announced as the new director of Scream 7, right? And that was announced when the WGA strike was on, but they could make that announcement because he's a director, he's part of the DGA. But they made that announcement a couple of months ago, and I remember seeing a post, and maybe this seems like nitpicking to some, maybe it does, but to me, it matters. To me, it matters. There was a post that was made that said something to the effect of, so-and-so hired as the director of Scream 7, and exciting, and it said it had Ghostface on the front, and it said Scream 7 now in production at Paramount. And I looked at that, and that's not true. That's not true. Now, I know what they meant, right? I know, but this person had thousands of followers, and it was retweeted 800 times and all this kind of stuff. I know what they meant, but it's not in production, because production is a very specific meaning. If you're going to share news, you got to know the stages of filmmaking, right? There's development, pre-production, production, post-production, distribution. And then sometimes you just hear, the three, right? Pre, pro, and post. Production means that the movie's being filmed. Right? There's pre-production, which is what we're in right now with It's Me, Billy, Chapter 2. And then once we enter production, that means the cameras are rolling. That means that doesn't mean the movie's being written. That doesn't mean the movie's being talked about. That means the cameras are rolling and they are filming and shooting the movie right now. Now, I know what the poster probably meant, right? Oh, it's in the works. It's in the works. Well, then you got to make sure you say that. You can't say production because that specifically means something else, right? And if you want to compete with the big boys or you want to gain that credibility, those little details matter, right? Because Bloody Disgusting would never say that, right? They would never say Scream 7 in production now. No, because they're one of the most reputable horror trades in the world. They are the Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and Variety of the horror world. Do you know what I mean? So you would never see a mistake like that. And if there was, it would be corrected immediately because production has a very specific meaning, right? So yeah. So keep that in mind as well. So it's important. Where was I going with that? I know you had said something. You'd said probably considered news. Yeah, it's news because there's a large Halloween fan base, and that large Halloween fan base is very excited, and they just love Halloween. And hey, Halloween's my favorite horror. I love it too. But listen, people can call me. I've been called a lot of stuff here on YouTube. I've been doing the YouTube thing now for almost 7 years. And I've had the channel for, since 2006, but this kind of thing I've been doing since 2017. And I've been called everything under the sun: pretentious, condescending, douchebag, asshole, like all kinds of stuff, right? From all sorts of people. And because they just don't like my opinions on something or whatever, or they think I'm being arrogant. I've been called arrogant as well. And it couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. I'm very passionate. So sometimes I can, get theatrical and people can misinterpret my theatrics, whatever, because I'm an actor, right? I'm a voice actor. So I like to be silly and fun and all that kind of stuff. But I try to choose my words carefully and hopefully I haven't, upset anybody. I'm not the gospel. Okay. I'm just simply saying what I think. And from my perspective and what I know and what I've learned over the years, what I think is likely happening. And I could be wrong, of course I could be, but I think it's important that we don't overanalyze something that doesn't have a lot of information and spread that overanalyzing, too far. It's important we make sure of that because I from what I understand, what I know, I just think that's important. That's all. And like I said, I'm not like the world's foremost expert. I'm just somebody that has a certain level of knowledge or a certain level of experience because of my experience, because of my job. But I'm not on here saying I'm Martin Scorsese or anything like that. I've gotten that too. Dave thinks he's this big filmmaker. No, I don't. What are you, crazy? I don't think that at all. But it doesn't, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 8, There's a lot of insecure people out there. MAGA Cat says, speaking of what's up with Two Dudes? Two Dudes is hopefully coming back next week. Tony's just been very busy right now, and I've been very busy right now too. Obviously, we are in the thick of pre-production, and we're awaiting on a SAG interim agreement from SAG. And it's a lot of stress right now. There's a lot of stress and a lot of stuff that's going on right now with It's Me Billy Chapter 2. I have a pre-production meeting tonight again, and Tony is going to be away, I think, for the next few days. So we're talking and we have ideas of what we want to come back with, but unfortunately this takes priority right now. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So, but it's coming back. Don't worry. When Tony and I come back, it'll come back and we'll be on fire. We'll be on fire. That's what she said. You've upset me, Dave. You've upset me. Oh, I know. It's so funny, hey, how you can have an opinion on something. One of the biggest things that I think we all should remember, and I've said this before on past streams, but it's important to, reiterate, is when somebody doesn't like a movie, right? When somebody talks shit about a movie, like how I talk shit about Halloween 5. Halloween 5 is a piece of shit. Halloween Resurrection, that's a dumpster fire. Whatever, right? I'm going off on my wild, crazy tangents, right? I'm not saying that those who love those movies are pieces of shit. That's not what I'm saying, right? And I think, and I understand why. Like I can totally intellectualize it, and it's not like I haven't been, caught up in those emotions too from time to time over the years. But I think it's important we remember that when somebody doesn't like a movie or doesn't talk favorably about a movie you don't like, yeah, it can be tough, because you're a big fan of it, and maybe you're a big fan of that person, and you hear them talking smack about a movie you love, right? You know what I'm saying, right? But it's not personal to you. I don't know you. I don't know who you are. I'm sure you're an awesome person. You know what I'm saying? So when somebody talks negatively about a movie you really love, that's not an attack on you. You know what I'm saying? We need to make sure that we separate that. It's like how I've said many times here on this channel, I'm an unabashed Avatar fan. Well, that's not a hip, cool thing to say, right? I mean, look at everybody seems to hate Avatar. I love Avatar. It's one of my favorite movies. I love Avatar. Love The Way of Water. Loved it. I thought it was great. And I'm out there singing the praises. I loved it. I thought it was great. You know what I'm saying? Well, we all know that Avatar is, the hip, cool thing to hate on, right? But I know when people say Avatar is a piece of shit, fuck Avatar. They're not saying, well, maybe they are if they don't like me, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? They're not saying Dave McRae is a piece of shit. No, they're just saying Avatar is a piece of shit. They don't like Avatar, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's important, especially in the world of fandom, this black and white thing we have now in the world, and this whole mentality of it's just, they're really years ago. If you followed me since the beginning, if you're a viewer right now watching me that has followed me since like 2017, 2018, do you remember way back in the day, I said there's a war on nuance. And sometimes people are like, oh, what does that mean? Whatever. But it's true. There's so much nuance that is just left off the table. We live in that black and white society. Things are either a 10 out of 10 or it's shit, or it's like two extremes of the spectrum. And no, nuance is important. It really is, but we live in a world where I could say that, you could say, I could say, you know what? I really like that movie. Go, yeah, you really like, yeah, I really like that movie. So what would you rate it? Oh, I'd give it maybe a 7.5, 8 out of 10. We actually live in a world where saying you really like a movie and giving it like a 7.5, 8 out of 10, somebody out there would look at you like this. But you said you really liked it. Well, I do, but you gave it a 7.5. But that's a really good score. You know what I'm saying? Like, we live in a world where, there are people out there that think it's either a 10 out of 10 or it's like, nah, that's not how it works. Listen, if I made a movie that had like 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, or even 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, that's a good score. That means 7 out of every 10 people enjoyed it. So like, unless, the score is, 25 or something, or 32, but I've watched some movies that are like 40% on Rotten Tomatoes that are actually, I really like, but anyway, here I am off on my tangent. I'll get off my soapbox, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, we got to keep that in mind, that when somebody doesn't like a movie you don't like, and they express that theatrically, like I do, like I said, I've been just Reddit Dave McRae, and you'll see a bunch of people not liking me, though it could be, the same 8 people. I don't know. But when I express myself theatrically, it's not an attack on you. I'm just having fun, right? But there are people out there that, man, they allow you to live rent free in their head, and they fucking can't stand you, a fucking piece of shit, goddamn fuck, all because they don't like what you say. It's crazy. It's crazy. See right here we go. Tails Fan 109 says, Halloween 5 is my guilty pleasure. I love it. I celebrate that, man. That's awesome. I mean, I think it's a piece of crap, but you don't. You're like, I don't. I think it's awesome. I'm like, well, you think it's awesome. And then you could turn to me and say there's a movie that I love, and you're like, well, Dave, I think that's a piece of crap. And I'm like, well, I think it's great. Like it doesn't have to be any hatred. It's fun. It's fun. I try to express myself in theatrical and fun ways to make it fun. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's about at the end of the day. All right, I'll go a little bit longer here, a little bit longer. Have I missed any super chats? I don't think I have, actually. I think it was just the 2 that came in, if I'm not mistaken. I want to see, because there's 210 people in here right now. I just want to see if there's anybody I haven't got before. Nikki Poo. I don't recall ever seeing Nikki Poo. says, I watched Dylan's New Nightmare a couple of days ago. Stellar performance, Dave. Thank you, Nikki Poo. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very proud of the film and very proud of Cecil and Vince and Miko and Ron Sloan and Cindy and everybody that was involved in that film. Very proud of. And I'm glad it's doing well. Although the view count has slowed down because it got age restricted. There's nothing we can do about that. That's totally at the discretion of YouTube. And so it has slowed down a little bit, but still, you know, it's been out for almost a month. It's got nearly 130,000 views. Obviously, you can't please everybody. So there are people out there that are like, Dave McRae sucks, you know, and I fucking hate the way he looks. Of course. I mean, that's art. That's par for the course. You know what I mean? If you want to be a filmmaker, you can't get into this business and you know, because you want everybody to like you. It's just not going to happen. And even YouTube, my fellow YouTubers out there, you know, Wolfman's Got Nards and Cody Leach and Lee and, you know, the Wham guys. I mean, they know all about that. Jimmy Champagne, they know all about that. They're like, oh yeah, you can't fucking the comments section and shit, you know. It's wild. We should do a stream on that. I should get those guys, you know, together where we just have like a stream where we talk about like our craziest, you know, viewer comment or interaction or something. That actually might be kind of fun. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, there's always going to be people that, you know, that don't like it. But thankfully, it appears that the majority of people really appreciate it. And obviously it ends abruptly, right? Obviously the plan is to do more and people weren't really digging the vibe and how, you know, of course, that's fair. But yeah, the feedback of my performance has been largely very positive. And again, I really appreciate that to everybody out there. Sincerely, it means a lot to me. It does, you know, and I really appreciate everybody who has said some kind things and that I'm just very thankful that I was able to show that it can be done. You know, and again, that doesn't mean that everybody likes me as Freddy. And to some people, it might have been an example of how it can't be done. You know what I'm saying? But overwhelmingly, it seems like there's a lot of people that are like, wow, yeah, you know what? I never thought that I could see somebody else as Robert, but you did such a great job that it worked. You know, and that means a lot. So, you know, if that's my legacy as Freddy, you know, to just kind of show people that, hey, it can be done, you know, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So I'm excited to see where it goes and what Cecil wants to do with it. Obviously, you know, they're going to let it marinate for a bit. I'm in the middle of Billy 2 right now, and that's going to be a big thing over the next year. So, you know, we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. But thank you, Nikki Poo. Really appreciate that. Let me see if I can get somebody else I haven't seen before. Kieran Spruce. An anthology type film on TV show would be best in my opinion, as I really enjoyed Season of the Witch. I'm a Michael Myers fan, but it did add something different to the franchise. You know, it's true. I think I'm not a huge fan of Season of the Witch, but I've come to appreciate it more over the years than I think I ever have at any point. I still, it's not like a favorite, but it's okay. Like it's, you know, it's fine. It's serviceable. But the music's great. I love, you know, Alan Howarth's music, but I would say that, overall, it from a business perspective, it makes sense. Now, I do agree that Miramax is probably taking pitches of a whole bunch of stuff. Michael Myers, Season of the Witch, anthology, everything's on the table. That's what, ultimately, if you walk away from anything from this show here today, or the article, everything's on the table. That's the news story, right? Everything's on the table, including non-Michael Myers stuff. So just because Michael Myers, you know, you go over to the screen here, just because Michael Myers is in this, you know, lovely photo here, does not mean that the next thing we get is going to be Michael Myers related. Obviously, we know why they used him as you know, on the photo, of course. But it could be too. It could be, but maybe not. It may not be either. It could be Season of the Witch. It could be an anthology piece. Like the thing that, and here's something too. Halloween Ends. I've said this, you know, before, but Halloween Ends. I didn't hate the movie. Didn't love the movie. I have publicly said that, ironically, I thought the movie was actually pretty good, ironically, until Michael Myers showed up. And then it was kind of like, what the fuck, get him out of here. Because I do think the Corey story, the story of Corey Cunningham, would have made an interesting jumping off point for an anthology series. Either that's the series, it's about him, or an episode, or, you know, what have you. I still stand by what I've said, that I do not believe that in order to deliver the message they did in Halloween Ends, that you didn't need Michael Myers in that movie. I mean, you know, I understand why he's there, but, you know, the social commentary and the you know, the town, and, you know, the residual effects and the PTSD and the, you know, the underlying symbolism and the cinematic language and all. You didn't need Michael in that story. You could have told that story, and it just, instead of Michael and Corey having a run-in with each other and Michael grabbing his neck and some sort of spiritual essence being passed, I don't know. It could have just been about Michael's dead. He's long gone. Like, imagine if Halloween Ends had ended a different way, right? Maybe there was no Corey, you know, whatever. Or maybe there was a Corey to set up the anthology series, but it wasn't the movie we got. It was very Michael Myers centric. Okay, fine. Now Michael's dead. Okay, he was put in the machine. He's put in the machine. Now he's dead. And there's this anthology series. And Corey, you begin it the way that you began Halloween Ends. He's babysitting. He has this thing. Oh my God. The town is still feeling the effects of the Michael Myers shit. They're not over it. So maybe it's only like a year or two later. They're not over it. The town has a lot of healing to do. There's a lot of trauma in that town. And you could cast Jamie Lee Curtis in that television show. You could cast Andy Matichak in that television show. You could absolutely do that. And it's the story of Corey Cunningham. And Laurie can still see Michael in Corey. You can still go through the same foundation of the story, but instead of some sort of run-in with Michael, what ends up happening is it's the residual effects of the constant bullying that drives Corey further and further into the depths of evil. And so, ironically, the town brings Michael Myers back. I put that in quotes because it's obviously not Michael Myers, it's Corey Cunningham. So even though the town is trying to move on, the anger and hatred that they feel, and this is, you know, this is in Halloween Ends. I'm just basically saying you don't need Michael to deliver that story. And I think it would have been stronger without him on its own merits in its own story, because I know a lot. Listen, there's a lot of people out there that think Halloween Ends is dog shit. From start to finish, they hate Halloween Ends. But surprisingly, there's a lot of people out there that not only love Halloween Ends, put them aside for a second, there's a lot of people out there that, funny enough, feel the same way I do. That are like, well, you know what? It's weird. I actually don't hate the movie, because the Corey Cunningham stuff was actually pretty good. It was interesting. And you still felt the Myers presence there because you had Laurie that was kind of, you know, he's another Michael, my God, you know, Allison, what are you doing? And all. And it was an interesting story that would have been really interesting as an anthology piece, as maybe your jumping off point for an anthology piece later on. And sort of, so there's this irony here where, like, the town ironically brings Myers, right? Not the actual Myers, he's dead, but brings that evil back. And I, you know, that's a story that I think would, and the fact that there's again, not everybody loves Halloween Ends. There's people right now in the chat room that think it's the biggest piece of shit of all time and think it's worse than Halloween Resurrection. I don't, but nonetheless. But funny enough, there's at least enough people out there that feel the same way I do, that go, you know, that Corey thing actually was kind of interesting. Like it's which proves to me that maybe that would have worked better as the leaping off point for an anthology, you know, an anthology story where it's kind of like the Myers stuff is gone. I mean, you know, hindsight's 2020, right? You can't do anything about it now, but I'm just saying that that's interesting. That is something that I hope that Malik and Ryan Freeman think about. You know, they're kind of like, wow, you know, this is interesting. You know, like maybe there's something there. Maybe there's, I don't know, you know, take like the spirit of that and do something else or whatever. I think it is more likely they will turn their focus to Season of the Witch because it's lower risk and it has already, like I've been saying, a built-in fan base. Doing something completely anthology, not connected to Michael Myers at all. Because remember, the Corey Cunningham story, if you were to do an anthology on that, if you had done an anthology on that, it's still connected to the Myers story. Even though Myers wouldn't have been in it, it's still connected to the Myers story because you have Jamie Lee Curtis, you have Andy Matichak, Haddonfield, you know what I'm saying? So his presence is still there. Whereas if you were to do, say, the Charlie Bowles thing, which is what I would want, which I think would be really cool, it's a bit of a higher risk because you have to, there's more to prove with that. There's more to prove. There's more to flesh out, get on board, and sell with that. Season of the Witch is not easy, but it's easier because it's already got that built-in foundation and fan base. So it's going to be interesting to see which way they go. It's going to be interesting to see which way they go. I don't know which way that's going to be yet, but it definitely will be interesting. Josh McKenna sends in another $9.99. Thank you, Josh, and says, I would give Barbie an 8 out of 10. Social media is social. Basically, you're saying hated it. Yeah, no, I liked Barbie. I did. Yes, it was preachy and it was woke. Sure. Yeah. But it's Barbie. And what did I expect? I mean, I knew what I was getting into when I went to see it, but I thought the set design was great. The production design was great. And I think the woke preachiness of the movie didn't affect me as much as maybe it did some people, because the entire movie of Barbie is satirical. The entire movie is over the top. It's like the entire movie is just one big mockery satire on both sides of the coin. So I think when it gets to the preachy stuff, it worked because you're doing it in an over the top sensational movie. Whereas if you start to get preachy and woke in a movie that's grounded, it feels more intrusive. It feels more preachy. It feels more hitting you over the head because it stands out more because the rest of the movie is grounded. And all of a sudden there's this big honking over the top preachy message, right? Whereas in a movie like Barbie, it's Barbie. So of course it's going to be about female empowerment and all that. It's Barbie. Of course, but also it's so sensational. I mean, Barbie Land is a real place where there's these people that are, what I'm saying? It's a satire. And so I think the preachiness, which is there, you see it, right? You just kind of go, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. And I think it just worked for me because the whole movie's over the top. But I thought they did a good job. I thought like it was well done, and I have to admit, I laughed when, Ken was in the real world and he was getting all like excited over the testosterone and the Stallone posters. And it's just funny, right? Because it's going to the extreme. You know what I mean? I just thought it was funny. I thought it was funny. So, I didn't think it was the worst, most woke movie of all. It's Barbie. Any guy who goes to see that movie and walks out going, well, that was just dude, you saw Barbie. It's not like you went in to see the Expendables and came out. Well, yeah, then okay, because it's the Expendables. But you're going to see Barbie. That would be like, a woman going in to see the Expendables and coming out and going, well, that was fucking weird. What's wrong? Well, there was no female empowerment at all, and there was way too much testosterone. Well, you do know you went and saw The Expendables, right? Well, yeah, but still, come on, it's The Expendables. Of course there's going to be manly men and rippling biceps and bulging pectoral muscles and maybe a little bit of, what could be perceived as misogyny and, a little bit of the, the innuendos. Yeah, it's a guy movie. You know what I'm saying? So yes, of course, it's Barbie. It's Barbie. It's Barbie. All right, just a couple more minutes. Let me see. Okay, another super chat comes in from Vendez Cinema. Thank you, buddy. Sends in $9.99. Says, Dave, imagine a high-budget alternative take on Halloween. I know it won't be done. $150 million budget. Oh, yeah, no, they'd never do that. Action-packed on the level of T2 and Aliens. Myers with his same mystique, but inside of an epic. Inside of an epic, do you have another one? Yeah, that would definitely be wild. That would definitely be wild. You guys should just YouTube Dave McRae, Halloween Loomis machine gun or something like that or whatever. That's a funny video on my channel that I go into with Halloween 4. Captain Casual sends in $5. Thanks, Captain. Says, I agree, Dave. I enjoyed that film until Michael showed up. It had me interested indeed. Plus, I love the score. Oh, yeah. The score in Halloween 18. Listen, if there's one thing I think all Halloween fans can agree on, despite what our reservations might be on the quality of the films in terms of the writing and the characters and the direction and the creative choices, despite all that, and it's been divisive, especially when we get to Halloween, Kills, I think we all can agree that the score that John Carpenter, Daniel Davies, and Cody Carpenter did is fantastic. You hear it's more prominent. I think it's less prominent in Halloween Ends, but even when you hear it on its own, I mean, it's fantastic. The music is fantastic. The best music we've had in a Halloween film since those 80s films. So, 100%. The score is great. The score is great. All right. Did I miss any super chats? I don't think I did. I just want to make sure. I don't believe I have. I just want to make sure that I haven't. I was checking my timing here. It's 4:10 in the afternoon. Another super chat comes in. And this one comes in from Jeff Harris. Thanks, Jeff. Sends in $4.99. Thanks, buddy. Says, hey, Dave, are you a fan of Blade Runner? Also, have you seen the sequel? I am a fan of Blade Runner. Yes. Yeah, Harrison Ford's my favorite actor of all time. It's not one of my favorite Harrison Ford movies, but I got to watch it again. I've only seen it a few times in my life, and I do like it, but I need to see it again. I still haven't seen Blade Runner 2049. I know. That's on the list. I've got to watch that. It's on the list. So I definitely have to, I got to watch that, but no, I haven't. And, but I do like the first Blade Runner. When I was in LA in 2018, I was there for the Voice Arts Awards, and my girlfriend and I, we drove to two locations where they shot Blade Runner, which was really cool. The Ennis House, is that what it's called? I think it's called the Ennis House, which is the house of Harrison Ford's character in the movie. I think the actual name of the house is the Ennis House, and we went over to it, and we got our photos taken there, which is really cool. And then we went to, there's a building downtown that we went to where they shot, I forget the name of the building too, which was really cool. But I do like that first movie. I do, yeah, for sure. And then Vendez Cinema sends in another $4.99 and says, imagine if Myers kills the president in the movie and all agencies and military are after him and they lean into him fully. Supernatural. Yeah, that would be wild, man. That would be, I think it's a little too extreme. I think by that point, you've jumped the shark into Sharknado territory with the Halloween franchise. I think it's like Halloween NATO. At that point, you might as well just put in like a tornado with a bunch of Michael Myerses that are like flying out of the spinning funnel of the tornado. And there's like 50 million, Michael Myerses attacking people. I mean, at that point, you probably should just do that. You know what I mean? But that's funny. That's funny. Frank Riker, my man Frank says, Ennis House by Andrew Lloyd Webber, also used for exterior shots of house on Haunted Hill. So it is the Ennis House. Okay. Ennis House. Yes. Is this it? Yeah, that's it. That's it. I was right. Yep. Yeah, I've been there. Not inside, obviously, but I've been there. I should show you a photo. I wonder if I could get a photo of me in front of the Ennis House. Quick. I'd have to dig for it. But yes, I have. That's cool. I did not know that. Let me grab a water here. All right, I got to wrap this up here. I got to wrap it up. Sebastian says, Dave, if there is one studio you'd pick, who would you want to take on the Halloween franchise? I don't know. I think A24 would be interesting. And I don't think the franchise cost is out of their means. I don't. Like I said, I think there's many ways to structure a deal. And the Halloween franchise isn't worth $500 million. Just because it makes $500 million gross doesn't mean the franchise is worth that. So I think A24, I don't know if they're interested in it, but I don't think A24, is off the table. I think maybe they've pitched something. I don't know. So I think A24 would be interesting, but they're kind of caught up right now with Crystal Lake. Universal's had their go. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I'm not really sure. I don't know. And I don't know if A24 is the right place for Michael, but it might be the right place for a season of The Witch. Diving into the psychology of all that, maybe. I think A24 might be a good place for Elm Street as well. Halloween, Michael, but look what they're doing with Jason. So, I mean, maybe I think, and I've said this before on the channel too, I think we will see what happens with the Crystal Lake series, and it may already be influencing what Trancas and Miramax wants to do. Who knows? All right, folks, that's going to do it for me for this episode of McRae Live. Thank you for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. Jump into the comment section and let me know your thoughts on the news of the day and all those crazy tweets you've seen and Facebook posts. Oh my God, I've seen so many crazy stuff. Let me know your thoughts on this and what you thought of what I had to say here today. These are just my thoughts, folks. I'm not the gospel. These are just my thoughts based on people I've talked to, my own knowledge, and I just kind of combine it all together and give my thoughts on what I think is likely and what may happen and try to come at it from a place of being informed. That's all it is. But I ain't a deity. So, who knows? I mean, tomorrow we could find out that, hey, Warner Brothers has picked it up for $900. Who knows? That's not going to happen, I don't think, but you never know. So let me know your thoughts down below and anything else I had to say here today. Thank you, of course, to my great moderators, Frank Riker, Top of the Short, Darren Sands, Chris Baber, Cody Snyder, and Andrew Stevens. Thank you for doing what you do. I really appreciate it. And my channel members. Hey, if you want to become a member here on the channel and get access to exclusive perks and shows, the link is in the description. There's 2 tiers. There's a Halloween only show called One Good Scare for tier number 2 members. There's horror movie nights. There's giveaways and member only Q&As. Jump into the description and check it out if you want to become a member here on the channel, and you get exclusive like emojis and badges and your name highlighted in the chat room and all that kind of fun stuff. So check it out if you can, and have a great rest of your Tuesday and a great rest of your week. If I don't, I might be around Thursday. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. All right, folks, have a great rest of your day. I will talk to you all soon. Cheers. Oh, wait, now I'm ready.